It's kind of like being a page in the White House and knowing the president's there but not officially meeting him.
Wow.
And but I did meet Al back in '91. Preston brought him to my home, and I've known him ever since, and he's visited me quite often.
Very interesting. For our listeners, though, could you characterize what the Montauk project, the Montauk Mind Control Project was, and what its goals were?
Yeah. Initially, from what I know about it, it was an outgrowth of the German mind control experiments that occurred back in the 20s and 30s and 40s. Now, the reason that they needed to really expand on this in 1970 was because of the Dulce Wars that occurred in July of 1969 underneath New Mexico, where there was an actual attack on humans in this underground base in the Four Corners area. And the humans lost, and the aliens did take over the base, and it was decided then that should this information leak out, which they knew it eventually would, and the population of the Earth knew officially that there was an alien presence that could not be controlled, there would be mass panic and chaos. And so they decided to create a project that would control the minds of people globally, and that way ensure peace and order under any circumstances. And so they chose Montauk, number one, because it was so far removed from a populated area, being on the very eastern tip of Long Island, just south of the Rhode Island-Connecticut border, and completely surrounded by water, and there was only one way in and one way out, and most of the year it was kind of bleak and deserted. So it was a very good place from which to do work. And it already had an established underground base, which was actually commissioned in 1799 by George Washington. And so this project initially was about mind control, and they brought in heavy hitters from the Nazi era, the German scientists that were working in the concentration camps. And they also brought in a lot of Soviet scientists and even a lot of Americans. And on a couple of occasions, I did even see Israeli scientists, and very rarely did I see any Asian or other Europeans there.
So would you say the majority of the activities that went on at Montauk were underground?
I would say 90% of them were underground, especially during the later years of the project. Let's say from 75 to 83, it was basically totally underground. The first 5 years, from 70 to 75, there was some activity above ground.
Now, I've heard this project named Phoenix.
Yeah.
With a Phoenix 1, 2, and 3. Is it different phases in different years? For instance, Phoenix 1, according to someone else, started in 48. Is that how you recall the name of this as well?
Yeah, and it was also called the Rainbow Project. There were many umbrellas that were given to it, and then many feeders that come out from the umbrellas that have specific functions. And so Montauk itself was under the Phoenix Project, and it had sister projects in Europe and in the western part of the United States. In Europe, there was an underground base in the Alsace-Lorraine region where the French and German border are. And curiously enough, this area became the headquarters for the European Parliament in the city of Strasbourg. And that project was called MALDA, M-A-L-D-A. And then in the western United States, they had similar projects going on in what became known as Area 51. All of these were tied together, but Montauk was the parent project for mind control and genetic manipulation. A lot of the genetic manipulation was then also transferred to Plum Island, which is just off the coast of Long Island, which to this day is still heavily guarded, and no private citizen can go there, only government scientists.
So going back, would you say that the purpose of the mind control part of Montauk was just so that we would not believe that aliens existed?
I wouldn't say that exactly. I would say it was to prepare human beings for the actual knowledge that aliens exist, so that there would not be panic and chaos.
So they were convinced that if people thought aliens, or if they knew aliens existed, they would lose it?
Yeah, because basically the idea was right after World War II, when the Roswell incident occurred, the government realized that if they were to reveal an alien presence on their Earth that could not be controlled or stopped, that would cause mass panic. After the Nazi scare and then the communists in Russia and all of these things going on, the U.S. could not be made to look weak. It had to be made to look powerful, and therefore they would keep everything under wraps and make everyone who admitted seeing UFOs or had proof of it discredit them or eliminate them.
But apparently a lot of extraterrestrials worked in this program as well.
Yes, they did. The bottom line really is that there's an alien group that really was the first ones on this planet and consider it to be theirs, and they've always been here. So that is a fact that the government is having a difficulty in releasing to the public, because to do so would show many implications of far-ranging areas, including religion, politics, economics, what have you, that would just destroy all the institutions as we now know them.
Include, I mean, our whole paradigm right there.
Everything.
Everything. Let me take a guess. Was that initial group, were they the reptilians?
Absolutely.
Okay.
They were the first colonists on this planet.
And they were here far before we were.
They certainly were, and they colonized a continent that was known as Lemuria or Mu, which no longer exists. However, remnants of it do exist still. The islands of Hawaii are at the very center of what was that continent, and most of the Pacific Rim, including the western portion of California west of the San Andreas Fault Line, is also part of Lemuria.
And would you say that there are many, many of these in existence right now, these reptilians?
Yeah, what happened, to make a very long story short, was that there were then human colonists that came to this world and colonized what we call now Atlantis.
Okay.
And there were battles between them, and the Lemurian continent sank. The remnants of those people went either underground into the earth, some went to the planet Venus, and some mixed with humans on the earth and created hybrids.
Is that what was described in the Bible?
Well, when the Bible describes the God saying, "Let us make man in our own image," it's plural. It is not a singular God saying that. It is a group of beings discussing the formation of a prototype of mankind. One of the possible treaties that was tried to create peace on the earth back in those days was the creation of a new human prototype, which the Bible calls Adam. And this was supposed to be a combination of the reptilian with humanoid forms, so that there would be a model of peace that could exist on the earth. The condition was that the androgynous reptilian body be used as the basis for it. Now, the reptilians are androgynous, meaning male and female in the same body. There are no sexes in the reptilian races. And so the story of the removal of the rib of Adam to create Eve is an allegory for the separation of a reptilian body into a male and female component. And then DNA was then added of humanoid forms to create a prototype for a human being.
It's quite fascinating. Have you ever actually seen a reptilian?
Oh, I certainly have.
You've worked with them?
I didn't work with them, but I worked under the direction of them through others.
Is this the same thing as a Draco?
Yeah, the Draco is actually the name of the star system.
Okay.
Now, that's another problem, because that is the home area of the reptilian races.